Welcome to We in Lewes, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewes and are helping our community forge a collective soul as appealing as it is unique. These are their stories in their words. They are the we in Lewes. I'm your host, Kevin McGinnis. Our guests today are Brian and Megan Kellman, the owners of Lewes Cycle Sports, which is located just off Savannah Road on the beach side of the canal. For your hardcore cyclists, it's an LBS in LSD. They offer a wide array of bikes for sale, rental, and their repair shop is phenomenal. They're also known for the bike outings they organize, including Light Up the Night Ride, as well as their active participation in other charitable initiatives. And they patiently offer maintenance instruction, which is critical for those of us who think we know how to repair a bike and in reality don't. Today's episode is brought to you by the restaurant The Pig and Publican, which is on Savannah Road on Lewes Beach and right by Lewes Cycle. Popular with locals and visitors alike, The Pig offers appetizers, sandwiches, salads, and entrees with a nod to global influences. I know from extensive experience that the staff is terrific and always welcoming. The bar features craft beers with a Belgian slant from domestic and international breweries, in addition to the many popular styles available in the Delmarva region. And this is big for many of us. The patio is dog-friendly, which means when you're out walking the most important member of the family, you can stop by and enjoy a beer on their patio. How perfect is that? Brian and Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having us.
It's true that yours is a story about owning a bike store, but it's also a story about courage and the importance of a strong family and marriage. Had you moved to Lewes before you learned the bike store was going to become available?
No, we did not. We found out about it and then kind of planned everything from that.
Megan grew up in Lewes and had been wanting to move back, and a couple of years prior to moving here, she got to a point where she was like, "We have to move. I want to move back home." My question to her was, well, what am I going to do there? We lived in the DC area, where there's a ton of jobs available, but it's also very expensive to live. But my thinking was, if we move here, there's not that many jobs here for me. So if we do it, I would want to own my own business. And, when we had this discussion, we had no idea what it was going to be. We were throwing out ideas left and right.
And was one of the ideas you discussed a bike shop?
No, not at all. It was, we were visiting her mom who lives here. So we were up fairly often, a couple times a month visiting her, and we were walking back from Lewes Beach and basically walking down the sidewalk, and we were talking about moving here. What are we going to do? I pointed at the bike shop that we now own, and I said, man, it'd be great to own a bike shop, but I'm pretty sure this guy has the market cornered here. And then a couple weeks later, her mom called us and she
was joking around.
Yeah, she was joking around, had no idea that we had this conversation. And she owns, a little bit of background, she owned the quilt shop that was directly next to the bike shop. So she goes, guess what? The bike shop's for sale. You guys should buy it. And that's what.
I was like, are you kidding? Like, it was so weird. She was like, what? And I was like, I'll call you back.
But at the time, you were living in Arlington, Virginia. Is that right?
Alexandria.
In Alexandria.
Yeah. We went back and forth. Arlington for probably 5 or 6 years, right. And then Alexandria.
The most recent place we were was Alexandria.
And you were teaching school?
Yes. For Alexandria City Public Schools, I was an elementary school teacher.
And you were working in one of those...
I was working for a trade association.
Those unique features in D.C.
Yep.
There are thousands, right?
Making less than Megan as a school teacher, which she often reminded me.
Alexandria pays really well.
No, but so it was tough. I mean, it was... we had... when we were talking about moving to Lewes, at first we had one kid, then we had another kid come along. By the time the second kid was about to enter daycare, we couldn't do it. I mean, we were losing money every week. So we had to make a change. I was talking about going to grad school just as hey, this is a solution, but no idea what I wanted to do. So I would have gotten my MBA maybe, and gotten out of school and maybe made a little bit more, who knows, but still kind of stuck in the rat race, and that's not what I wanted to do.
The right order here is we got to move. I want to move. We want to have a different place to raise the family.
Yes.
That's part of it.
Absolutely.
Uncertain as to the location was nailed down, but what are we going to do? How are we going to make money? None of that had been resolved. But then your mom makes this phone call as a joke, and it turns out to be the perfect moment.
Yep. She used to gossip with one of the guys, one of the mechanics. He would like come into the back door of the quilt shop and like chat with the ladies and like just told my mom that it was for sale. I don't know.
You learn this news, then what happened?
Then
it doesn't sound like you were ready.
No,
to buy a business.
Well, we didn't have.
Well, we had a small savings.
We had small savings that was going to start going down, but we didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't want to insult the guy by throwing him an offer. But I looked into, dug into financing, owner financing, because it would have been difficult with the small amount of savings that we did have to offer to get a business loan, even a small business loan, to try and purchase the business. So I just met with him, told him exactly what we could put down, and told him we needed to finance the rest over a certain period of time. And he jumped at it. I almost wish I offered less, because he was very, very eager to sell the business. So it was just the right time for him, but it actually fell through the cracks.
He thought one of his mechanics was going to buy the business. So it kind of like, timing wise, I was actually on maternity leave with the baby number 2. And timing wise, he was like, oh, I think this person's going to buy it. But because my mom had that backdoor gossip sesh with the other guy, she learned when it was coming back, like that deal was kind of falling through. So he knew when to reach back out. If we had done things when originally we thought it was going to happen, I wouldn't have gone back to finish out the school year with my daughter. After my daughter, I would have had to leave, the school. I didn't want to do that. But it worked out because I was able to then go back, finish the school year, and then we ended up finishing everything up to start October 1st of that year.
And that year was?
2017.
Did you have a business plan?
No.
We did.
I wouldn't call it a business plan.
I mean,
I took a lot of random notes. Mainly they were drawings of what I wanted the bike shop to look like. I mean,
he would come down like every weekend and go to the bike shop, and I guess for lack of a better word, he was like kind of like an apprentice to the guys that work there. The main owner he wasn't there.
He wasn't there
all that often.
Whole lot, yeah.
But the 2 guys that did work there, they like ran the place. He learned a ton from them about bikes and fixing bikes and the way they did things and the things the way he saw them running the business, and I think was able to learn what he didn't want to do when he was running the business. Yeah. And I say him because I was with the kids and he was the one coming down, learning everything.
Yeah.
Do you appreciate the extent of the gamble that you seem to just rush right into?
I feel like because it was here in Lewes and I grew up here, I know what it's like here. It's the perfect place to take a risk like that, especially even that many. I mean, it feels like forever ago, but in 2017, it was even smaller than it is now.
Was there a little bit of a gulp when then COVID hits?
Oh my God. Yes. I was super freaked out. I mean, we really thought it was going to be the end, maybe even. We thought we were going to close our business because we were told we needed to close our business. I'm sure other businesses were even more freaked out, but like the night before we were supposed to shut down, we learned that we weren't going to have to because, well, it was
like a last minute.
It was a last minute thing, but there was like a news interview. It was like, I think it was with the state. And don't ask me who was speaking, but it was a woman. And she was saying, we're not telling you to stay inside. We're not telling you can't leave your house, go for a walk, go for a bike ride. And I was like, that, like send that to someone. We need to see that. And then our bike shop was more deemed essential, especially with like the repair side of the business.
Given all that's going on here, it's a dream idea. We got to get out of DC. We want to raise the kids there, but we're going to own a bike store. But what led you to believe that you could make the bike store work?
My mom was a business owner. I knew my uncle who used to help her with like all of the confusing parts of like taxes and licensing and that. I knew I had him as like a resource to be able to guide us, and he was amazing. I know my husband, his personality is awesome. People love him. So do I, just for the record. Our values on like running a business, like I think people would appreciate that, being honest and, I don't know. I think maybe personality was a big part of it.
I wasn't sure. I did a ton of research on businesses, and a lot of small businesses don't make it within the first year or the first 2 years. You don't make any money in the first year. We didn't have any money.
But we also saw, like, when we looked at the bike shop, we saw so much opportunity. Like, from where it was when we walked in the door, like, carpeted, dirty, beach rental bike shop is really what it was. We just saw, like, potential to make it better.
Was it more rentals? Was the business at that time more rentals than sales?
I think so, yeah. That was kind of one of the things which felt easier than the other side of it.
Rentals is what made the business profitable. It wasn't sales. Maintenance and service is huge with bike shops for driving profit. They were doing that, but not to the fullest extent they probably could. But rentals was really is what drove the business if you looked at the books.
But it was scary because we took over in October. And so we had like a full year to get through before like profit season, I guess.
We paid our first payroll with a cash advance on a credit card. That's how going into the winter. So I didn't know if it was going to work.
When you start a business, I've started several, and when you start a business, after you get past the sort of emotional rush, then there's the reality. Like you need licenses, you need power from the state, you need things from the city, you have tax issues, you have all these other things. When did all that sort of settle in? Like, okay, we're going to do this, but now we have all of these other responsibilities that we didn't. When we dreamed about doing this, they were not part.
Right.
Of
when
the
did
expected
that settle
reality.
In? I mean, the first week.
Yeah. Well, I remember we put in like our first order that we were responsible for paying. It was like $1,300 worth of bike accessories, and I was freaking out. I've never, $1,300 on anything. And the guy who worked there at the time, a longtime employee, was like, "Well, how do you expect to make any money if you don't spend any money?" I was like, "Oh, all right." I guess it makes sense.
Brian doesn't like to buy things.
But Brian, was there one moment that happened fairly early on when you realized I can make this work?
Yeah. After we made it through the winter, it was tough. Looking back at it, I don't really know how we made it through. We were stressed about money, but it wasn't. I think we made it work because we didn't know what the heck was going on, and we didn't know that we should have been freaking out. And then we made it to the summer, and we had a small staff, low overhead at the time. Like our rent was ridiculously cheap, so not a lot of expenses, not a whole lot of debt.
Actually, if your landlord is listening.
Well, he's raised it substantially since then. Yeah, it's about. We've gotten more space, but it's about 4 times what it was. So, but it's still it's fair. I did sales before for the trade association. I did membership sales a lot from a cubicle, but then we would have conferences, conventions, and that's where I was good at sales, person to person. I could, but I didn't like picking up a phone or sending in annoying emails. It was the person to person sales that I was really good at. I mean, selling bikes is, and really anything, if you believe in the product, it's very, very easy to do. And if you're truthful about the product. I mean, I've worked for places where I didn't feel like the product was good, and my performance, I think, showed, because it's very hard to convey, like, hey, you need to spend this money if you yourself don't believe in the product. The bikes, it's easy. You know, I never make people overspend if they're uncomfortable. You know, I kind of sell people what they need. But early on, I mean, I guess to answer your question, you know, within the first weekend that we were there, like selling a bike and really not knowing anything about it, and just, you know, I don't know, just person looked happy riding their bike, and that's kind of it. Like, it looks like you enjoyed it. Like, yeah, I did, and they ended up buying it. So.
You had a chance, Brian, to work at the store before the sale was complete, which gave you a good and practical introduction to some of the business, not all of it, but a good introduction to some, sort of the nuts and bolts of a day. Then you inherited staff, right?
Yeah.
That was good. I'm bad, but it was good to start for sure.
No, yeah, we inherited two guys in particular that were great, longtime employees. One had been working on bikes for 40 years. You know, I think he was much older than me. I can't imagine how they felt, seeing at the time I was 34. I can't imagine a guy who's been working on bikes for 40 years, and the other guy they're both one was in their late 50s, the other one like late 40s, and here's their new boss coming in, 33 years old, never managed anybody in their life. It had to be pretty difficult, but that's how I learned the business, really. They were extremely patient with me, maybe because they had to be. But yeah, I learned a lot from those guys, and just, you know, they really helped me.
And you had the wisdom to listen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the thing about going into a business not knowing anything, and knowing you don't know anything. It's like you obtain a ton of information, and this was something, knowledge that I needed to gain. So I was like a sponge my first couple of years, and still am. You know, it's almost like a toddler learning stuff, you know, at that pace. You know, it's like little simple things, but it's just, you know, you suck in all this information, and you do it because your livelihood depends on it. So it's, you know, I was up late doing all kinds of research. I went to Asheville, North Carolina, for a week, and that first winter, and took a bicycle repair class. Saddled up to the guy who had 40 years repair experience, whether he liked it or not. I was like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing there? Why are you doing this?" and just sucked everything in, because again, we had to. I knew that, you know, both those guys were employed there, and they could both leave tomorrow, and that was the case. I needed to know how to run the business and do the work that was needed to be done.
When you first saw the business, it seemed to be much more oriented towards rentals.
Right.
Today, you offer a wide range of services. What have you changed, or what have you added?
So
I think we haven't necessarily added, but expanded. Like, I know in the past when someone would walk in the bike shop, they maybe from out of town, like with a really nice bike, someone would walk in and be like, "Hey, my brakes are acting up. I think I need a brake bleed." And one of the mechanics that had been there forever would be like, "We don't do that here." And so he was like, "Wait, what?" We need to do that here, and literally learned how to do it himself, and then taught the other people.
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, it was for what it was good. It was just a very basic bike shop, but there was, you know, bikes are getting more and more advanced, and I think that the thought was, you know, we're just going to stick to the kind of the entry level bikes, beach cruiser stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of things where, like Megan was saying, we were seeing some expensive bikes walk in. People willing to spend a lot of money on service on their bikes, and those people were taking one step in, taking a look, talking to somebody maybe briefly, and then realizing this isn't my bike shop. Just because you're a really good bicycle mechanic in 1995, if you don't learn anything since 1995 on fixing bikes, you're not going to be a very good mechanic now. So same thing with selling bikes. We sold our probably highest priced bike in the shop at the time was like a $1,200 road bike. A really nice bike, but it would sit there for a year, 2 years, eventually be discounted. It's just because we couldn't even sell that level of a bike. We didn't have the knowledge to sell it. Now our most expensive bike in the store is, I think right now, $7,500. We have a bike on the floor, so it's just changed. We have people in the shop employed now who eat, breathe. They like to ride their bikes, and because of that, they're able to talk bike with customers. They can relate to those customers, and we also have employees who are just your average, casual cyclist. So we can kind of relate to, the person walking in looking for that, beach cruiser, and we can relate to the guy who comes in, a lot of people call them spandex-clad warriors who are looking for that, bike that weighs 5 pounds. I would much rather rent a bike for a week than sell a $500 bicycle. It's just the margins on bikes are not very good. You're not even taking it into account if you're paying shipping,
paying someone to put it together,
paying somebody to sell it. At the end, I mean, if you're selling a $500 bicycle, low margins, you might, depending on how much time you spent with the customer, how much time it took together, shipping, all that stuff, like, you're not really making a whole lot. Now, it looks like it at the end of the day. You're like, oh, cool, $500 sale. That's something that took me a while to learn. You'd look at the sales for the day and the money going into the bank account. Like, all right, like we just did $2,500. Like, that's great. But the $2,500 is in the bank account for a couple of days, and then it leaves very, very quickly. So
you've also, though, expanded in the sort of the things you're involved in. Tell us about Light Up the Night Ride.
It's the idea came about because of like Lewes lights and how all the homes in the area, and especially I guess it may be the year of COVID, I think, kind of like made me more aware of it. But you can drive around town in your car and look at all these beautifully decorated homes around the holidays, and our town is small and very bike accessible, and I thought, why wouldn't we do that on bikes? But then we took it a step further and wanted the people to decorate their bikes. So not only are the riders, like, the idea was to be able to look at these beautiful homes, but then like other people see the riders going through town with bikes that are lit up, like Christmas lights in the wheels and, the battery operated ones and those kinds of things. We had like bike decorating contests and all that. So that was the idea. The first year we didn't realize, again, live and learn, that we needed like permitting and all that to be able to just ride around town. To me, it was like, oh, we're just taking some people on a bike ride. But
how many people ended up joining you?
Oh my gosh. So the first year we ended up actually not riding and just having like a little party, but we had like a bike decorating contest. And people came with their bikes for that. But then, and like, that was at the shop. But then the second year we got everything in line. And how many people showed up?
I think they limited it
2 years ago
to 150.
Working with the Lewes Police Department, they didn't know what it was going to look like either, so they were concerned. And the it was at night, so I get that, but their concern was it's not safe, but we were trying to show that it is. Like, this is a biking town. We're bicycle friendly, you know. Was it 150? 200.
I think last year was 200.
250 last year.
Okay.
So we just
So you're
year,
moving a bulk of 200 bicycles all together
through the town.
Through the
with
town.
a police escort.
with a police escort now.
Yes.
Yeah, and those 250 registrations sold out in 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
We would, if they said unlimited, we would have had 600-700. I feel like.
So the ride, and it was freezing both years, but we then end back at the shop and have a party. And the Pig and Pub last year did food. We love them. It was awesome. They did pulled pork, was it?
Yeah.
And chili, and it was amazing. They just donated it.
Wow.
Yeah, the owners, Doug and Lisa, were really,
Amazing.
really nice, and they were actually open that night. I felt terrible about this, but because there were so many people there, they took over the parking lot, and they didn't.
And then the restaurant people didn't have places to park, so we'll have to block our parking lot.
Yeah,
for
so
them
they
next year.
had a very, very slow night when they shouldn't have, because of we took over the parking lot. But yeah, we appreciate them for putting up with us.
You also have something called the Full Moon Ride.
Yeah.
Correct.
I think there's one. Maybe it's June or July. It's called the Blue Moon.
Oh,
right?
what? There was one specific moon called. The moons are called different things. I'm not an astrologist, but leading up to it, we'll know. There was a pink moon. We did one time. So, but it's the night of the full moon. Did you know this? Each full moon during each month has a different name.
No.
Yeah. But we get a group of riders together and we'll go through the state park and look at sunset, if it times up right, sunset and then the moonrise, or maybe one or the other.
We aren't, me in particular, very good at planning things. A lot of times I announce these rides days before. Part of it is the family, kids, we're busy. In the summer it's tough. We're just exhausted. So a lot of times I'm just I don't know if I'm up for a ride. And now we have kids who are in sports, so it's all right, yeah, we're doing it this date. And Megan will be like, well, did you look at the calendar? We have this date. And it's all right, never mind, canceling that. So a lot of times we announce
Was
rides.
it July though that we did the most recent one?
Yeah, and so
that one, the moonrise or the sunset and the moonrise, there was an hour in between.
Yeah.
So
no, I think they were at the same time.
Okay.
Were they not? I don't know.
Edit that.
But those rides are in the state park.
Yes. Yeah. So we
Do you have to get a permit from the state?
Yes.
We did. We didn't in the past, although maybe that was something where we should have asked. We just thought we were riding our bikes in the park. Why would we need a permit? But yeah, so the Cape Gazette, for one of our rides last year, the Cape Gazette heard that we were doing a ride and gave us some great publicity. But I think the state park was like, well, wait a second. 100 riders going through the park at night, and I also think they thought it was that we made money on these, and we don't. It's free. We've recently asked for donations just to cover our expenses. We pay employees to be there, and now we have to do permitting with the park. But they've worked with the state park. Worked with us once they found out that we were doing it for free. Mm-hmm. It was going to be something like $250 a permit.
Yeah, but they let us have one overarching permit for any rides that we do throughout the year.
Yeah. It's a great opportunity. It's a slow ride, all levels of riders. It's a social event. It's not we're getting a bunch of exercise. It's just we're getting out on bikes and we're seeing a cool sight. Beautiful moonrise over the Atlantic, possibly a sunset over the bay. People really love it.
I think it's great and it's fun when you're doing it, but I also think it's a good opportunity for us to educate riders on how to ride on the trails and at night. And we require lights, helmets. Before we leave the parking lot, we give the disclaimers or rules, stay to the right, those kinds of things.
It seems that there are a couple of distinct varieties of bike store customers. They can range from kids to occasional riders, from recreational riders to dedicated cyclists who think nothing of walking around in public in tight bike shorts jerseys festooned with corporate logos, and shoes that click into pedals. How do you satisfy all of them?
Usually, well, the guys who wear it, I always wear tight shorts underneath my regular shorts. So whenever somebody walks in, I take off my shorts we can relate. So man to man.
I think you can relate pretty much to all those groups of people. Kids, I have kids, so that's easy. And a couple of the people that work for us are like retired and even have grandkids. So kids, that one's easy. With the rental side of things, I mean, generally somebody who's a casual cyclist, has the same needs and wants as like the renters that walk in every time we see them. So then when you get to the more avid cyclist, I mean, like Brian was saying earlier, we have people that live, breathe, sleep, like just love biking. So generally, like for me, if that person walks in, I will say, let me give you to this person. They can help you.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, going back early on when I was saying like our highest price bike was $1,200. Like I didn't know how to sell that. I didn't have an even $500 bicycle at the time. So I kind of forced myself to get into that type of riding. I bought an expensive bicycle. She actually had to like force me to do it. She's like, this is something that you should do. You need to know the product, and the only way to know the product.
I think for those of us who are listening are fascinated that your wife made you go
buy
an expensive bike and do more bike riding.
Yeah.
Like I said, he doesn't like to buy things.
Yeah, and then
for himself.
Yeah, and then with that really nice bicycle came those shorts we were talking about, which she also loves.
I do. That is true.
So that's what allowed me to getting out on group rides with people who do 50, 100-mile rides, really talking with those people, riding that type of bike, working on that type of bike, allowed me to be able to relate to those type of customers and sell that bike. I can also relate to, again, the guy who's just getting into it because his doctor says you got to get out and exercise. Well, I haven't been on a bike in 40 years, and the sticker shock is, they think of a bicycle as like, so I'm probably going to spend $150 because that's what I saw in Walmart. Then they walk in, then they walk into our shop and it's, the average, like, I mean, there's bikes with gears. I think our lowest price bike with gears is like $500, but there's a reason for that. It's the quality is there. So it's educating people about like you're making an investment.
And educating people on the difference between a bike that we sell versus a bike from like a big box store like Walmart, there's definitely a difference. And also educating people on the fact that this bike was put together by a professional mechanic.
Overall, it's just being able to know who your customer is. Everybody's different. Just because I'm a casual cyclist doesn't mean that the person walking in who's a casual cyclist as well is going to like the same things as me. So it's really just listening to the customer, asking key questions, but letting them talk. And then you get to throw in your suggestions. And over the years, Megan and I have sold thousands of bicycles, dealt with thousands of customers. So all that experience weighs into now I'm, if you, Kevin, were to walk into the shop and I'm not sure what I'm looking for. I can get to the bike for you very quickly and easily because just by listening to the couple answers to the questions that I have for you.
I knew before even stepping foot into owning the bike shop that there's no way you can always make everyone happy, but if you can do something to make something better, then you should, and that's just the right thing to do. Yeah. And that's kind of how we run our business.
Yeah, and you're gonna make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. I think the majority of our customers are extremely satisfied and happy with the products and the services that we offer. But there's always going to be mistakes made. It's just we're human, and just owning up to those mistakes.
Do you divide up ownership duties between the two of yourself? Does one person take responsibility for staffing and another is responsible for the books?
So I'm only laughing because we just had this discussion on our anniversary.
Anniversary
actually.
dinner, yeah.
So you went on your anniversary dinner and talked about the bike store.
Yep.
We an hour earlier, we talked about how we weren't going to talk about
It's impossible.
the bike shop.
It's impossible. But no, I mean, I do recognize and know that Brian definitely does more at the bike shop. I mean, behind the scenes, anything that I could do, I am helping with, like payroll and tax payments and those kinds of things. But, I mean, he's definitely there more. And we talked about how, like, because of that, then I do more at home, which isn't as appreciated as I would like it to be. But, but I am at the shop, too.
I think we balance each other. I mean, we have now 3 kids, all young.
That was something else COVID got us.
It's tough. I mean,
Third.
I work weekends. You know, she works Saturdays, but is off Sundays. So her days off are with the kids, usually without me, which is tough. I mean, I just you know, if you're a parent, you have kids, and you work. Work all of a sudden becomes different. Work becomes like almost like a break. You get to take a breather. Where before, you know, before kids, work is, you know, a place where you're like, oh man, I can't wait to get out of here. But work is.
You make it sound like you don't want to come home to our children.
No, it provides kind of a break because kids are tough. On a couple trips I've been in, you know, Megan's like, how's it going? You can hear the kids like, you know, screaming in the background, fighting.
Well, like when you went to Asheville,
yeah,
or
how's it going? And you always say, oh man, it's long days. You know, I can't wait to get home, which is true. Usually after like 2 days, you're like, okay, I gotta get home. But you got to make it sound tougher than it actually is. Otherwise,
You seem to have 2 personalities that blend very well. Who's the worrier?
Brian, for sure, 1,000%. I feel like that you asked about like, how do we know it was going to work? I feel like when we bought the bike shop, like I didn't think it wasn't going to work. Like he was very concerned. I'm like, you just need. I just kept saying like everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to work out like it's supposed to, and it weirdly did. But I don't know. I've just like had like good feelings, and I'm not saying I don't worry about stuff because I definitely do. I stress out a lot. He'll tell you that. But just when it comes to the bike shop, I've just always felt, I don't know, like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Now it's kind of one of those things where I'm like trying to dig deep into, and we're trying to dig deep into how do we step
Balance.
away from operating the business to owning it, so that we can actually have some kind of life outside of the shop, especially with a family. And that's been tough, and it's crossed into my mind many times over the past couple of years. Like, you know, you get that fantasy, like if somebody walks in, like my dream's always to own a bike shop. Here's a blank check. Like, you know, that's crossed my mind. But I go back to thinking like, well, what would I do? Like, I like doing this, so I don't know.
Not every family can work together and stay happy with one another. Can you keep store problems out of the house?
No. Definitely not. There's literally, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but, like, just because it's a work problem doesn't mean it doesn't, like, emotionally affect you. So I think we've gotten a lot better at, like, working things out. Maybe both of us become less stubborn and standing our ground and, like, trying to see the other one's perspective. But just, like, in general with work and in life, so I think.
Yeah, it stinks because, you know, as a couple, you have fights over who's taking the kids to, you know, I took them to soccer practice last time,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, or finance is always a big thing. But now you're having, you know, work where work can be stressful, mistakes are made, and it's
like, you didn't call that customer back, I told you.
Yeah, so it's, you know, you have, you know, the fights you should have as husband and wife that are going to happen. It's part of any healthy relationship. But then you're also bringing in, you know, stress from work and stuff that happened at work, and that's what we need to do a better job of.
Well, the hard part is, like, if I had a disagreement with another employee, I would never talk to them about it the way that I would talk to him about it, and vice versa. So we try to remember
It's
that.
it's very easy to.
It's more personal.
Yeah, it's very easy to call my wife out on stuff that I think she did wrong, as opposed to like one of our employees where I tiptoe around it, and
I take it as a compliment.
Have you tried to create boundaries where, for this period of time, we're not going to worry about the store? Because I'm assuming as a small business owner, it's always in the back of your mind.
It's not really realistic to think that way, just because like the bike shop is our life, and our life revolves around that. So it's always going to come up, regardless of whether it's something simple like who's working today, the kids have off school, just it's always there. So it's our life.
I've been digging in deep how to kind of let go. I said this to somebody a couple weeks ago, and I think it's true. October 1st is going to be 7 years owning the bike shop. I don't think I've ever had a true day off. We have to go out of town for that. I mean, even Christmas, I find myself like opening up my laptop, looking at stuff, and it's just because I think I like it. It's almost kind of like a hobby, so I still enjoy it, but I definitely need to just kind of figure out a way to step away from that, because your hobby shouldn't be how you make a living. Otherwise, you're never able. That's probably how workaholics are born.
There you go.
So I may be a workaholic. I don't know.
How did the two of you meet?
So after undergrad, I worked for a little while and then went back to get my master's in elementary ed, and I was working in restaurants and bartending at this Irish bar in Arlington when it was a Sunday, and him and his friends walked in. Sunday, like brunch-ish time.
We had a fun night the night before. We were all hurting when we woke up the next morning and decided to make ourselves feel better by drinking more alcohol.
So you were presenting a very winsome picture there for your meeting Megan the first time.
The restaurant that I worked, or the bar that I was working at, was next door to like a really good brunch spot, and they'd been there first, and then they just like wandered over. There was like no one there, and they were funny and ridiculous. But as a bartender, I wasn't like very open to just like giving my phone number to people. But he was just awkward enough that it made me feel pretty comfortable, and he asked me for my number like 10 times. So I finally gave it to him.
Yeah. I was never very good with women, picking them up, but I had enough liquid courage to ask her
10 times.
Enough times where she's probably like, this is just going to be easier if I give him. But it wasn't a fake number.
So you didn't give him a fake number?
No, which I found out when I called her at like 1 a.m. that next.
Seriously?
Yeah, I told him to call me when he was sober.
Yeah.
And he did.
Went on a first date the next day. Didn't drink any alcohol. We went to a bar. I didn't have a car, so I didn't want her to know that. So it was right around the corner. So
duped me.
Yeah, didn't really know because of it was a little foggy what happened the day before.
We don't need to say that part.
Anyways, I wanted to kind of see what kind of a person she was, so I figured meeting at a bar, and if it wasn't something that was great, we could, quick and easy, and hey, nice meeting you. Not going to work, but yeah, it worked. It ended up working. Yeah, I don't.
Who knew first?
I kind of knew right away.
Same.
Yeah. It just was it was one of those like connections where you're like,
it's just
it's
easy and comfortable.
Meant to be.
Did Lewes turn out to be the community you were hoping it would be when you moved here?
1,000%, yes. I kept saying everything's gonna work out, but everything seems to have like fallen into place. Like we did rent for a little while when we moved here, but then timing wise, we like bought our house in 2020. But if we'd waited, we probably wouldn't have bought a house in Lewes, maybe out on the other side of Route 1. But I love where we live, and I love our kids' school, and our business is close to our home and to our kids' school, which is amazing. I don't know. I can't see us ever having been able to do that in the DC area.
No.
Ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I just tell people, like, you asked earlier, like, what made you do this? You were risking a lot. I don't think we were risking a lot at all. I think we were kind of on a hamster wheel in DC with really no answers. Megan had her career as a teacher, but again, I was making less than her. I liked my job, but we weren't able to really, something we were stressing out about every week about just buying groceries, and moving to, when you live like that, which a lot of people do, but it's stressful. And so making a big change, like buying a business, to me, people are like, wow, this is a big risk. Like, I didn't think it was. I think the big risk is staying
complacent.
Yeah, complacent. Well, staying there and just doing the same thing and not improving your life. So I think we took a shot at improving our life, and
paid off.
It worked out. And if it didn't work out, we could just go back to doing what we were doing before.
For our listeners who are thinking about starting a business, who, like you, may be willing to dramatically change what they are doing and where, what advice would you give them?
I mean, do your research.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
definitely.
You asked about a business plan earlier. We didn't. It definitely would have helped.
We kind of did it after the fact, though. Like, once we realized where we were trying to go.
Yeah. I think, for us, purchasing an existing business that was established was very helpful rather than starting from scratch. That's something that I would recommend doing to somebody looking into going into business. But yeah, doing your research and making sure, just because you have an idea that you think is going to work, doesn't mean that it will. And then you also have to know what's involved. It's, like I said, our business plan was me drawing out the layout of the store, and that's like the least.
It's definitely always going to be more work than you think that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think people think running or owning bike shop is easy and fun, but there's so much more that is involved. And I know that's true with any business.
I guess my advice would be, find a product that people need, do your research, and then also
make sure there's opportunity for growth.
And make sure you are willing to commit to it and put in the work. Because if you're not, you think it's just going to be fun and you can put a closed sign on the door anytime you want to go fishing, it might not work out too well.
And make sure it's a product you like and believe in.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably number one thing. It's for us, like, it's, I mean, I love bikes, but it's selling something that really makes people happy. It's extremely satisfying.
Megan and Brian, thanks for joining us today, for your candor, for the whole spirit you bring to the store, and for what you're doing here for the community. I think some of these evening moonlit bike rides would be fantastic to do.
Yeah, definitely.
I only hope that you go slow enough for some of us to keep up.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks to today's sponsor, the Pig and Publican. If you've never been, you have a wonderful surprise waiting for you. If you already have, then you know what a refreshing oasis it is over on the beach. And finally, a special thanks to you, our supportive listeners. Without your support, well, Steve and I don't even want to imagine that. We also, again, want to thank you for being responsible for well over 6,000 downloads now of the podcast. That's something we never expected. Steve, imagine what we could accomplish if we actually knew what we were doing. If September is any indication, lots is going to be happening here in Lewes this fall. Festivals, markets, bike rides, booze and brews, shows, parades, and over 24 events at the Lewes Public Library every single week. There's something for everyone, so I hope you can find time to take advantage out of all that's being offered in this wonderful little town. Wherever you are, have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us. Until next time, from our home here at the bar at our beloved Kindle restaurant, this has been We in Lewes, the podcast.